Thank you very much for watching us this evening. Plenty of things to talk about this evening with Labor MP, and I'm pleased to say he's here. Ed Husic, nice to see you, mate.
Good evening.
He's also going to well with Apple, so if at any time his iPad explodes, that'll be why. He's also other software companies and as well. Peter Rees, the former Howard Government Minister, who is in solidarity with other Bombers fans, wearing the scarf tonight on TV. How are you?
Very well, and the report came out today, and the Bombers are going to beat Geelong on Friday night. That's what I'm mainly interested in.
Yeah, can they beat Asada? That's the question, though. All right, and Janine Perrott, of course, the best thing about the Sky Business Channel, and you can see her at 6:30 Eastern live, or the repeat at 10:30 Eastern from the Perrott Report. How are you?
I'm very well.
Now, let's have a chat about...
This from Twitter, by the way.
Yes.
Oh,
People
don't
tonight
start, for
saying that you should be on Twitter. John Bergen was saying it.
Yeah. I think
James.
it's only fair. People would like... I'd like you to move something in the
Is
Parliament.
Peter Rees on Twitter?
Peter Rees is on Twitter.
Oh, damn.
All right.
I was relying on that.
Yeah. All right, even the beekeeper's on Twitter. All right, now let's jump into what was said today. Alex Hawke. Now, Alex Hawke, by the way, is not a new member of Parliament. He's been around since 2007, so he's gone through 2 elections. He's been around for a while, and he didn't do one, but he did 3 interviews today, trying to throw the coalition idea of the paid parental leave scheme under the bus. Here's part of what he had to say to one of those interviewers, and this was Mark Riley on Channel 7.
Certainly this policy is unnecessary and does spend a lot of money. I am a strong voice about this, and that is because I know that at the moment, in the current economic conditions, this wouldn't be the best idea.
By the way, for a MP, the man's got an awful lot of Australian flags. I get it that he loves his country, but dear God, if you saw that story this evening, he's got more flags than your local flag shop. We get it. You're Australian, OK? Tony Abbott had his reaction to the statement as well, and this is what I found curious, is that presumably the leader or people around have given this bloke a kick in the backside, but clearly he ignored it. He did 3 interviews today. Tony Abbott.
We've had this policy for the last 3 years. It's a very good policy. It shows that the coalition gets it when it comes to the modern Australian family.
Here's Joe Hockey pretending that he likes the idea of this policy as well. Have a look.
It went through the party room. It's been ratified by the party room, which Mr Hawke's a member of. So one backbencher going off like this, it's certainly nothing compared to a backbencher trying to launch a challenge against Julia Gillard and then failing to turn up for the vote.
Yeah, we'll get to Ed in a second. But also, you know, getting back to more familiar terms, David Bradbury, this bloke is a clown. Have a look.
I think we all know that this is about one thing and one thing alone. Mr Abbott has had a problem with women, and this policy was directed towards that. But people like Mr Hawke have said, well, hang on a minute. Notwithstanding the problem that Tony might have with women, this does not make sense.
Please. Ed, I'll get to you in a second. Janine, I saw your comments this evening on TV.
I like the way you said that. I'll get to you in a second.
I'll get to you in a second.
We'll get to you.
All right, we'll get to you in a moment. No, Janine, the whole point is that last week, Conservative people are saying you can't increase taxes, can't have a levy, the country can't afford it. The essential argument around mining taxes or carbon taxes is that $1 more of tax on business will ruin it. This is 1.5%. Now, it could be the best meaning 1.5% in the world, but if you're going to be consistent, you can't be pro the tax on business for a paid maternity leave scheme.
Which is exactly my argument. If you're going to hammer them on the economic situation, we can't afford it, and the mantra they have just maintained for 3 years, no impost on business, how you can do this when, to be fair to Alex Hawke, I can tell you he is not alone. He is only voicing what many MPs think and what many businesses think. And they thought there was an opportunity in the last few weeks with the deteriorating budget situation and the kind of rhetoric we're getting from the opposition now. You would think they could say, look, actually, we'll hold off and we'll see. I thought the worst about today was Joe Hockey had just got up and given a speech saying we're going to stop middle-class welfare, the entitlement mentality. Well, kind of, this gets into that area. Look, yeah. I'm hoping what they'll do is, after they get in and the situation's so bad, like we've never seen this before, they go, all bets are off. But I love Malcolm Turnbull's comment. He said that it won't be felt, the policy won't be felt, because Tony is very committed to it. I liked Tony is very committed to it. That's the thing.
And this is the thing to me, Peter. This policy went through the 2010 election. To be honest, I'm surprised that in the way that it's funded, the way that it's formed, it's made it through to 2013. Because if the key narrative you are trying to build politically is they're the guys that keep putting taxes up, how can you politically explain away the idea of an increased tax on the one sector of the Australian economy, business, that you've been running to defend and throw yourself in front of every tax and almost pull down the parliament for the past 3 years?
Well, the problem with this policy is that you can't explain it. And that's why what Alex Hawke said was absolutely right, and I'm totally with Janine on this. I mean, you know, it doesn't make economic sense, and as far as the politics are concerned, I have absolutely no doubt there are a lot of people in the coalition who are not happy about it. It was a decision made by Tony. It was a unilateral one, and you know, people resent that, quite frankly. And in this particular case, it's, you know, it's sort of added to the fact that really, when you look at the sums and paying out people 150 grand a year, you know, people say, is this the right time for it anyway? And, you know, on top of that, it was supposed to be sort of offset by a decrease in the, you know, company tax. But, you know, I don't think they got the money for that. So it's made this whole proposal much more sort of obvious. And so I say good on you, Alex Hawke, for having the guts to stand up and maybe put your political career at risk for, you know, for a couple of years or something. But I think this guy's going places because he's prepared to stand up on something that needs, you know, to be called out on. Yeah,
well, hold back, Ed, free kick in a second. But what I just wanted to ask you about here, Peter, is that, okay, in terms of party discipline, presumably this often happens where somebody speaks to a journalist, or you do one interview that's a radio show, and then inevitably the leader's office or somebody on the leader's behalf will say, OK, you've had your say, shut up. The fact that he did it 3 times today seems to be a particular act of middle-fingered defiance to those that are trying to shut him up.
Well, look, honestly, you know, it's one day. I mean, I don't know whether he's going to go on about it for day in, day out, but I mean, I don't take anything out of the fact that he's done three media opportunities. I mean, good luck to him. I mean, look, these things need to be said. There's no point, you know, coming along after the event and saying, oh, it's a pity somebody didn't stand up and speak, you know, the sort of things that need to be said. So, no, I don't criticise him for that.
I have to say quickly that 2 others, Paul, have come out since. Mel Washer and another backbencher. So it's not just Alex Hawke. There's a big push.
Now, you know what the crime is? The crime is we don't have glasses of water, and that Janine can't throw it at me because I can't believe I'm agreeing with Peter Reith. And I don't think Peter will believe I'm agreeing with him either.
Yeah, I don't think the viewers can either at some point. Now, look, but the whole fundamental thing here is that the narrative against your government is you're the guys that keep putting up tax. So in Tony Abbott's case, how can he be arguing for the political solution that he's got to put up a tax?
First, no. You look at our tax take relative to GDP versus the other mob, and ours is actually lower. So I just want to get that on the table first.
Sorry, Peter, hold your fire. You'll get to retort.
Yeah, that's right. I can hear him winding up from Melbourne now.
He's ready to go. All right, keep going.
So there's that. Look, I noticed a few comments on the screen saying that this is a lifestyle choice, and that there's actually some important reasons why you need to be able to have this type of policy in place. Not to the tune that the coalition's put in, but the fact that we've always been worried about the fact we have a low birth rate, and we also try to work out how do we boost participation in an economy that's got skill shortages. Now, we put in place a scheme that's off budget, 300 mil. About 270,000 families have benefited from it, and it's made sure that we're in line with most OECD countries. But hitting 3,000 or over 3,000 companies with the tax slug that they're going to do, and mind you, the coalition opposed us cutting company tax, so they opposed that and we couldn't get that through. Plus, they're adding this on top, which has to flow through in terms of costs within the economy. You can see why it's not a winner. If I can make the point about Alex, I mean, there's a whole debate we can have about people having their say, and I think that politics in this country is, who am I, given the things I've done in the past, to be lecturing about, people not speaking out. But the point I'd make about Alex is I actually think this is not just a rogue that's gone off, and I take on board the points that Janine's made. I actually think this is an expression or a start of a process to say, on the coalition side, that they've got to have a serious think about this policy that there's not much backing for.
But let's be honest here, Janine, after the election, if the polls are to be believed, it's going to be the backbench that's the opposition, not Ed's team.
Yeah, look, as I say, I think all bets will be off after the election, so I would be toning down the rhetoric a bit, but I do think the fact that there are 3 MPs now who've come out, I'd love to hear what Bernie Brooks from Maya says about this. If he thought the National Disability Scheme would take money out of his profits, I don't know what he thinks this would do.
In mild defence of that bloke, though, and I don't want to throw myself in front of the Twitter outrage bus, did you notice that the very next day that charity groups were saying that they think think that the levy might result in people not giving as much money to charity. Was there the same outrage when basically the same point was being made?
It was a Twitter kerfuffle.
Yeah, all right. Now, but Ed, I wanted to ask you this though. When we talk about the idea of paid parental leave, that is an evolution from where we were at the start of the government and and in the Howard years of the idea of the baby bonus. Now, I don't know if you want to make some news for me here, but my view is if we've evolved to the idea of the payment through paid maternity leave, then you've got to get rid of the baby bonus. Can we have both? Should we have both?
Well, you know, here's something that you wouldn't be used to as a politician, just saying directly what, off the top of my head, I haven't given that aspect thought in terms of getting rid of the baby bonus. I know that there are people that are concerned. We've made some adjustments to it, particularly in terms of reducing the bonus for the second child coming through. But there is an issue about trying to find ways in which to encourage, like, as I said, like, this is a serious issue in terms of population growth. We're seeing some of that in terms of an ageing workforce and not having people coming through, and that has a whole host of issues that flow from it. So I'd be very careful about making any snap judgments on whether or not we get rid of the baby bonus. But we do have something now. As I said, the OECD's recognise you need to have something in place to do this. Now we have 95% of the workforce that's covered either through this scheme or not. And one final stat that I reckon is important, the bulk of the people that have claimed for this are under, I think, $43,000 bucks a year in terms of their earning capacity, so it's helping people that might not have had that assistance going through.
But Peter, what about that idea that, okay, it started off, you know, they have one for the country, one for the family and all of that stuff. But if we've now moved into this idea that both sides of politics believe in paid maternity leave, why do people still get the fistful of dollars at the start when presumably the decision about do we have a kid now or a bit later would be more so based off the 6 months after you have the kid rather than the money at the start? If you were looking at a budget, would you keep the baby bonus?
Well, I think you just got to go back to sort of, you know, to tin tacks on these things and ask yourself, you know, why is it that we need a government program which taxes people and then gives them money back to, you know, undertake whatever the governments think that they should be doing? So, you know, this is the old problem, as Ronald Reagan once said, you know, government isn't the solution, it's the problem. And with a lot of these, you know, middle-class welfare things, they're just taking it out of one pocket and putting it back into another, and then they expect everybody to be terribly grateful. And, you know, you get these nonsense claims, oh, it's good for productivity. I mean, if you really want to boost productivity, you ought to be cutting out a whole lot of government programs and reducing tax and let people make their own decisions. I tell you, most people spend their own money a hell of a lot more carefully than governments do.
Yeah,
now,
you're such a bloody old school Tory quoting Reagan.
Wait, but I agree with the idea.
no,
He's saying we spend our cash better than...
It's an old free enterprise approach. That's what it is, you know.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it's an old free enterprise approach.
Now, I'm keen to know what you think at any time. Hashtag PM Live, email pmlive@skynews.com.au. Now, by sheer accident, it's almost like when we book Kate McClymont to be on the show, Craig Thompson news happens. Well, there's industrial relations talk on the Conservative side, and here he is, Peter Reith. Now, Tony Abbott's made it very clear. He's not going to touch unfair dismissal. And as I have long believed, the only thing that's going to come out of this bloke before the election about industrial relations reform is going to be union regulation. Do you expect anything more than coming down hard on unions? That'll be popular, but they're not going to do anything that's going to be even remotely controversial in industrial relations. Most likely, Peter, that'll happen at the next election, where it'll be like a GST-style election where Tony Abbott, rather than doing nothing to stuff up the imagined majority, probably will be betting his MPs in 2-3 years' time. What do you think's going to happen with Abbott and IR?
Well, if he won't do it now, you know, what's the chance of him doing it next time round? I don't think it's very good at all. In fact, you know, I'd say if you're not prepared to take on something on behalf of small business now, why would you want to do it later? I mean, I must say I'm quite disappointed about that decision. I mean, the fact is that go-away money is out there in the community. It's a discouragement for employers to give somebody a job. It's a penalty on employers, small business who want to give somebody a job. And it's bad news for somebody who's looking for a job, and there'll be more of those people, you know, under Labor's mismanagement as time goes on. So I must say I was quite disappointed to see that they wouldn't do that. If they're not prepared to stand up for small business, quite frankly, what are they prepared to stand up for? I think it's a backward move for them politically, and it's bad for economics, and it's bad for productivity. So, no, I'm very disappointed.
Now, Ed, obviously, if there was anything even remotely near some of the stuff that Peter would like to see happen, you'll be able to go to the election and repeat over and over again, work choices, work choices, work choices. Is the reality, though, that the system isn't perfect, it needs some tinkering?
And we've gone through reviews and we've tried to work with a whole range of people. I mean, there's never any full agreement on this type of issue. You're always going to have some fairly heated debate on either side. And, you know, I think with the whole thing about work choices, I mean, whenever I've debated this, I've tried to debate it on the basis of policy, and having been someone that's actually represented people as a former union official, and having lived the experience, knowing what that does, you know, directly in terms of people's lives. But I think what this reflects is that there is a bristling, in terms of the ideological debate that's going within the conservative side of politics about, you know, where to head on this. You know, Tony Abbott's trying to play safe politics, but there are others that are saying, well, actually, we fervently believe in X, Y, Z. So, similar to what we've just been discussing with paid parental leave, I think you've got the same thing happening on this front.
But what I'm interested in, though, is that as somebody who has been part of the union movement, I think that this is the slam dunk popular thing that Tony Abbott's going to be able to do, which is to say, when it comes to industrial reforms, unions must be run like companies. The people inside them must be held accountable like that. How do you feel about that? Because that is one of the many albatrosses that people place around, even good members of the team like yourself, is the nonsense at the HSU, the garbage that's gone on inside those things. And there is a fundamental belief, and I think it's true, that the unions do not get held to the same standard as a company. Put simply, should they?
Okay. So, yeah, there is this debate about do you apply corporations law in terms of organisations like unions, and mind you, organisations that are employer bodies, because they'd be covered by the same thing.
Correct.
And you know, you do have to, and as a former official myself that sat on management committees, you do have to go through the process of ensuring that your accounts are audited, that you're able to withstand scrutiny as well when you get, you know, questions raised about your accounts and the way that you've done things. And also importantly, I didn't, from my own personal perspective, I always looked at it as you had to be able to explain these things to members as well. Yeah. And I certainly have the same degree of outrage about the way that, you know, the type of stories that we've heard over the course of the last 12, 18 months about the HSU, because you are responsible for other people's money. Having said all that, you know, you can't expect that you're going to get management committees that are made up of people from, you know, from the workshop, from the shop floor, to have the same level of literacy as you would of a major corporation. But having said that, part of the reforms that we put in place is to say, right, if you do go on these management committees, you've got to get trained up on how to read accounts, proper policy, process, and the like.
Well, that's the thing. Peter, I'll get your response to that in a second. But Janine, I mean, I think when Tony Abbott says this, in terms of real people land, it'll just get giant tick. Because even though HSU might be exception to the rule, all of that stuff, crazy uncles, former national president of the party, but still, that's how laws get changed. They get changed by the extremes that other people take it to.
I'm not as pessimistic as Peter Reith. I think Tony Abbott does have a don't frighten horses strategy. At the moment, all they want to do is get elected. What happens after that if they get a big mandate? John Howard didn't take a GST to the 96 election. He waited till he was in there, he does it. I think then you would hold some kind of summit, do what Bob Hawke and Paul Keating did, with employers, with the unions. You talk about reforms in these areas. I think that there could be reforms.
But Peter, just on that question too, I mean, the idea about unions and what Ed said about the way that union leadership has to work, I mean, we've argued this for a while now. It is pretty simple, isn't it? That if you are in charge of other people's money, you should be held to some sort of greater account. I think it should be equal to that of a business. I mean, we're not talking about a soccer club here. We're talking about big organisations with millions of bucks.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the sooner they're brought to heel, the better. And yes, I think the same standards that are applied to you know, business should be equally applied to the businesses of running trade unions. So, yeah, I think that should happen. I think that probably will happen. And hopefully the ICAC will keep on its toes and it'll clean out some of these types. And, you know, we've got connections going all the way into the federal cabinet these days with who was giving out letters and support and approval for some of these things. So, yeah, no, I think we are going to see a big clean out. It'll certainly put the unions on the back front. But quite frankly, as important as that is, and something I totally support, the fact is the unions in far too many areas today are calling the shots. They've jacked up prices in the resource sector, which has really undercut one of our great industries. We've got militancy, you know, in a whole lot of industries, and we need to be approaching and dealing with those, you know, underlying problems. And cleaning up the union's accounts, that's one thing, but quite frankly, you know, some of these really aggressive unions need to be confronted by legislative change.
All right, got to take a break. In a moment, we'll talk about one of Ed's favourite topics. That's the NBN. He was there launching in parts of Western Sydney yesterday, but it means I get to play that wonderful grab from yesterday where the NBN didn't work. Oh, that's right. It was Optus's fault, apparently. Breaking back with more. We're live across the country, only on Sky News.